Pokemon Crystal has a special place in my heart. I remember being 8 years old and getting my first Game Boy Color and being able to play this second generation of Pokemon games for the first time. If you want to see more Generation 2 and Pokemon Crystal challenges, playthroughs, solo runs, any of that, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, let me know what you want to see, and let's get into it. This is my first video jumping into Generation 2, and today we'll be playing Venusaur. Because it has good base stats, its learn set is actually pretty decent, it has good coverage as well as status conditions that it can inflict. It should be very consistent throughout the playthrough. I will be doing playthroughs with all the Kanto starters, fully evolved versions at least, Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard in Pokemon Crystal. For today, I've replaced Chikorita with Venusaur, so I will be facing Cyndaquil and eventually Typhlosion from the rival here. But at least in the early game, I will be much stronger. I mean, the type effectiveness isn't great, but I do have Leech Seed, which can restore health, and my base stats are just higher since I'm evolved. However, this will not always be the case, so this Typhlosion might become an issue later. After we get the Pokédex and talk to Professor Elm, we can head out onto the route. We can start our journey with Venusaur. Our first opponent is going to be youngster Mikey, the very first required battle of the playthrough. One weird thing about Generation 2 is that there's a lot of battles where the opponents are under-leveled and the experience growth is a little bit weird for a solo run. Some of the gym battles could be very tricky. I suspect Falkner and Bugsy could be quite difficult. But before that, we're able to catch a Pidgey. This will be our flyer today. In these solo runs, I am allowed to catch HM users and use them outside of battle, but obviously only Venusaur can be in battle today. I named Pidgey Patrick. Thank you so much, Patrick, for being subscribed. If you want to see your name pop up in these videos, make sure to get subscribed. And if you leave a comment, I may see your name and may give you a better chance of being in the video. I do also catch a Bellsprout here for the Cut and Flash HMs. It can really only do damage with Vine Whip. In this case, we're going to name it Sean. Thank you, Sean, for being subscribed. You rock. But because of the type effectiveness, I'm actually going to go do Sprout Tower because that will give me more experience and it'll be quite easy for the most part. I clear all of Sprout Tower to try to get up to level 13 before the fight against Falkner. However, I didn't plan out my PP usage and I went into the last battle with only like one use of Tackle left, which is not good at all. Obviously, Bellsprout also double resists my Vine Whip, so it's kind of even footing there. And then he has a Hoot Hoot that's level 10. Luckily, it doesn't have any flying moves. If it did, I think this would have been over. What ends up happening is a very slow battle where I set up Leech Seed and just have to slowly let it faint to that. That is just not a good way to play, but it was kind of out of necessity because I went into that battle not really knowing what I was doing. And that may be a theme in these first few playthroughs. I am still learning these games, so please go easy on me. But I wanted to share my experience of getting back into these games because I loved them so much as a kid. And I'm trying to do as much research as I can, but really I wanted to just get into the games and get some experience doing it. As I mentioned before, I am a little bit worried about Falkner's Pidgeotto. The Pidgey won't be able to do much because it will only use Tackle, but Gust is actually a flying type move in Generation 2, so I wanted to deal at least a little bit more than that with Tackle. Luckily I have a berry, so this fight is pretty safe. With that, we can pick up the Miracle Seed from the guy outside of Violet City here. This will be an excellent boost to Venusaur's grass type moves. It gives a 10% damage increase. And all three of the main starter types, water, grass, and fire, get held items that are pretty easy to find in Gen 2. A lot of the others are actually like time-based events, like they only happen on specific days. But because I like to play through these solo runs with as little modifications to the base game as possible, I'm actually not going to be manipulating the time of day. Bugsy's team is weird. I don't know why he has two Cocoon Pokemon to start, Metapod and Kakuna. They're just not good, and there's so much more interesting bug Pokemon, especially in Gen 2. There's actually much better bug Pokemon out there that he could have used. Scyther's Fury Cutter could be a problem, so I put it to sleep. Sleep Powder is so good. It's not quite as good as it was in Gen 1. That was just insane, but it is still very useful for getting around opponents like Scyther that could be a problem. After Bugsy, we have the rival here in Azalea Town, and he starts out with the Ghastly. This thing is actually a little bit scary because of Hypnosis and Lick. Spite will lower my PP, but I'm not too worried about that. The bigger problem is if I get to put to sleep or paralyzed, I could be in a really tough spot against Quilava. Luckily, Sleep Powder helps me avoid those status conditions, and I can also use it against Quilava to try to reduce the damage from Ember. Otherwise, it's actually doing pretty decent damage. I set up Leech Seed as well in case Quilava wakes up and can get some hits in, because it is doing good enough damage that I am worried that it could take me out faster than I could take it out. But luckily, the rival's last Pokemon is a Zubat, which is not that impressive. And so Venusaur can clean up that fight and we can head off to the forest. In the forest, we get a nice upgrade to Venusaur's learn set here. We get Headbutt. Headbutt is so much better than Tackle, and this will really improve our damage against anything that resists Vine Whip. So I head off to Goldenrod City and I can go to the underground. There's a few important items here, including the coin case. I'll clear the trainers as well, and then I can head over to pick up an Abra from the game corner pretty quickly. I could also catch these in the wild, but the game corner is just a little bit more reliable for me. I name Abra Laser. Thank you so much, Laser, for being subscribed. Abra is going to give me access to teleport, so that's going to be an awesome and useful thing to have. I can also go pick up the bike here in Goldenrod, which doesn't actually require so much running around as it does in Gen 1. I don't have to go to a different city, come back, get a voucher. It's just picking it up, which is kind of nice. And then I can start heading to Whitney's gym. I didn't realize that there's only one required trainer in this entire gym. I thought there was more than that, but in my pathing, I actually realized I can kind of sneak around some of the trainers, which is great for speed because I don't think Venusaur needs the levels because we're about to hit level 22 where we're going to get Razor Leaf. And that's going to make this battle much better. It's not quite as broken as it was in Gen 1 because crits are not as insane anymore. And in fact, Miltank actually gets the crit against us. A rollout crit is so unlucky and really actually does some good damage. So since I don't get a crit, it actually gets the win there. The Clefairy is such a wild card using Metronome, so I don't really exactly know how much health I'm going to have going into the Miltank. But Venusaur has that classic trick of using Sleep Powder and then attacking while the opponent is asleep. And that gives Venusaur a much easier win the second try. And with Whitney defeated, we can head toward Ecruteak City. We do fight this Fire Breather on the way, and he has 2 Magmars, which you think would be a problem, but they're so underleveled, and Venusaur's Headbutt actually does pretty good damage at this point because we have our attack boost now. Faulkner's Gym does give that 12.5% boost to the attack stat, which is really useful for Headbutt since we're going to have to use that quite a bit. And now with the Kimono Girls, we're going to have a bunch of evolutions we have to fight. I'll show the 2 most difficult ones here, obviously Flareon and Espeon. Other than that, because of our level, the others are not too difficult. Venusaur is actually getting quite strong, it feels like, in this playthrough, which is really nice. I can clear all the rest of the Kimono Girls, pick up Surf, and head over to the Burn Tower. Here, I'm going to fight the rival again, and he leads with a Haunter. I go into this without saving, thinking it's going to be quite easy, but then I miss Sleep Powder on my first turn, and Haunter hits a lick that paralyzes right off the bat. That's a little frustrating, but I think I can still make it through. Sleep Powder is still quite broken. I am a pretty decent level, and with Headbutt and Razor Leaf I have good damage, so all it takes is just putting everything to sleep now, right? Well, against Magnemite I just go for it. At this point I think it's pretty much over, but then it confuses me. I finally get a Leech Seed down. I should have been going for Sleep Powder, but a little bit of a misplay, and I'm back to the Kimono Girls. Alright, I'll clear them again. We'll get back to the rival. Let's try this again. On the second try, I just tried to take out the Haunter as quickly as possible. I skipped Sleep Powder this time, which is dumb, so it puts Curse on me. I can put Quilava to sleep, but I just can't knock it out very quickly. I try to set up Leech Seed to try to restore some health to make Curse not take me down quite as quickly, but it was really not a good idea, and then I just go down to the Curse. But I realized something. I forgot to save before the rival again. Oh no! I'm back to the Kimono Girls. Well, I clear them again, and I get to Espeon, and wait a minute. Confusion actually makes me confused? Okay, well I'm just gonna try to knock this out, and then I go down to Espeon. Well, okay, now with 5 resets, I'm actually back to the rival. I can actually put the Haunter to sleep. I did make sure to save before this battle this time. Now with my head on straight, I can prioritize Sleep Powder, and then knock out with Headbutt. Make this much simpler. Just stick to the game plan. Don't try to just freestyle and go for the KO before setting up Sleep Powder. And then I do the same thing on Magnemite again, just go for Razor Leaf. Well, it worked this time. That's what I was trying to do the first time, but it was still kind of dumb, but it worked out. After that, I can challenge Morty. I could have gone and trained a little bit before coming back here, but now that I have Mud Slap added to my moveset with Sleep Powder, I don't think it's going to be an issue. I don't have any big weaknesses here. Nightshade obviously does good damage, and Curse is always a concern in these playthroughs with one Pokemon, but the combination of being able to put the opponents to sleep and lower accuracy is really beneficial to me. Razor Leaf doesn't do incredible damage since it's double resisted, but Mud Slap also is really low power, so they deal about the same. Luckily, with enough strategy, I can get through it without a problem, and we can head out toward Olivine City. You can kind of see now that I'm on the bike, my movement is a little jittery. That's just because I'm not really used to the map yet, so I want to make sure I'm not going the wrong direction, and I'm being very careful, but it gives this kind of weird start and stop pattern to my movements around the overworld. I will get better about that. I will get much more fluid in these playthroughs as I go, but I can finally get down to Olivine City and meet the rival, which as a kid I thought he was about to battle me here, and it would always stress me out because your Pokemon would be so weak by this point because of all of the trainers on the way. But luckily now we can heal up, pick up a fishing rod actually, and pick up a Krabby. I named Krabby Robert. Thank you so much, Robert, for being subscribed. You're awesome. With that, we have what we need to go and talk to Jasmine in the lighthouse and then head off to fight Chuck. You can fight these 3 gyms in somewhat different order, Chuck, Jasmine, and Price. You don't necessarily have to fight Chuck when you're down here to pick up the potion, however, I might as well since Venusaur does resist fighting moves as a poison type Pokemon. So because of that, I think that we're going to have a pretty good chance for success, especially because Razor Leaf does pretty good damage to fighting Pokemon, especially Poliwrath. It didn't work that well against the Hitmons because they actually have much better special defense in the second generation than you would think because of the low special in Gen 1. But it works out against Chuck the first try, and we can go back to Jasmine to give the potion back, and we can go to her gym right away. Going into this, I have Mudslap for the Magnemites, and I thought this was going to one-hit, but it actually doesn't. And then I get paralyzed, which is really annoying. I guess I gotta go back to using Sleep Powder for these guys. The Steelix gets really lucky and gets 2 hits in as well. Just not my luck there. I learned my lesson for the next one, and I use Sleep Powder right away and miss. And then I get paralyzed anyway. Okay, and then I get confused. That's not great. I keep hitting myself in confusion. I haven't even dealt any damage yet and I'm still paralyzed. I finally knock out the Magnemite and get to the Steelix, but I have 9 HP left. Iron Tail misses. I get a Razor Leaf in. Steelix misses again. I get a crit. Okay. I'm really not in a good spot. I go into Magnemite. Maybe it's going to work, but it doesn't. The next attempt goes much better. Sleep actually works and I can knock out the Magnemite. I use a Mud Slap on the Steelix to lower accuracy just because Iron Tail is so inaccurate. And then Razor Leaf does pretty decent damage. It's only neutrally effective, but Steelix has bad special defense, so it works out pretty okay. And then Magnemite is the same as the first. So that gets us the win. And with that, we're off to Mahogany Town. Here we have to go to the Lake of Rage before we can fight the gym or do anything else. So I'm going to go off and fight the shiny red Gyarados. This thing was awesome to me as a kid. It was the first shiny that I think a lot of us probably saw if we started with Gen 1 games. And the color of this shiny is just so nice. I wish more shinies had these like really bold choices and not so many like just slight changes or green ones. I don't like the green shinies, I'm sorry. With that, we meet Lance and we can head off to the Rocket Hideout. This whole Rocket plotline can take quite a while, and it's a little bit annoying because it's so easy. I mean, we're fighting level 20 Pokemon after 6 gym battles. It's kind of crazy. Once I clear the Rocket Hideout, I can head over to Price's gym, which actually is going to be incredibly easy. Because not only is Price pretty bad, his whole team is actually weak to grass moves, which you wouldn't think because he's the ice type gym leader, right? But ice doesn't actually resist grass, and a lot of ice Pokemon are either water type as well or ground type for the Piloswine. So Plant does great here. Great job, Venusaur. With that, I can make a trip back to Goldenrod with Fly, and I can pick up Return. I specifically set the day to Sunday for this playthrough because I wanted Return. Since I'm not manipulating the time, this means I cannot pick up the pink bow, but it should be good enough damage, and I have Razor Leaf with the Miracle Seed, so I think that's going to be actually a good combination too. With that, I can complete the Radio Tower and fight Petrol at the top. This battle is kind of annoying just because I run out of Return uses, and then I can use Growth to boost Razor Leaf's power, but it just requires a little bit of setup and using Sleep Powder. My accuracy is dropped pretty badly by the end, which is kind of annoying. I'm glad that it's not as bad as Gen 1. Nothing is as bad as getting your accuracy dropped in Gen 1. But it's still a little bit annoying. But we can get the win because the Rockets just are not that strong, but then we can fight the rival in the underground. He leads with a Golbat with Confuse Ray, which I didn't realize he had at this point. I guess it makes sense. He had a Zubat earlier. I should have thought of that. Like I said, it's been a while since I played this game. I forgot what a lot of the battles looked like. So it's nice to be reminded about these teams that you see in this game, and it brings back a lot of nostalgia seeing this pixel art. I think Gen 2 has incredible pixel work, and the art is just so vibrant and awesome. With the underground cleared, I can fight the Rocket Executive with Houndour and Houndoom, which I was really scared about. Obviously my typing doesn't match up well here. Luckily they don't have great defense, so Return does pretty okay. But when Houndoom comes out, I realize it only has Ember for its fire move, so that actually puts me at ease a little bit knowing it doesn't have Flamethrower, because that would have been scary. Now we can head toward Blackthorn City and we can go through the ice path. And here we pick up Waterfall, which is really important. I didn't realize this was where it was when I was practicing before this, and I wandered around for a bit in there trying to figure it out. I eventually had to look up a guide to like remind myself. It's a really weird place to put a required HM, because you can just miss it if you're not careful. And now it's time for Claire, the Dragon type gym. And I'm really glad that we get to see more Dragon types in this game, but the fact they just gave her Dragonairs is kind of sad. Now I'm glad we get to see Kingdra, which is a really cool addition to the Dragon Pokemon in this generation. The fact that she has mostly Dragonairs again is not that inventive, unfortunately. So this fight is a little bit tight. I am at a pretty decent level, but Return isn't quite getting the knockout necessarily on these Dragonairs, so I have the Paralyzed Cure Berry, which should help in case I do get hit by Thunder Wave. That gets me to Kingdra, which I can use Razor Leaf on because it's neutrally effective, and with a crit, it will do much more than return. And that will get me past Claire, after which I can go to the Dragon Den and I can clear their questions, pick up a Dratini as well. And that will give me all 8 badges from Johto, but in Gen 2, the game is not over yet. I will go pick up a couple of items in Violet City, including a rare candy and a PP up. These are going to be useful as I head off to Kanto. This is the part of the game as a kid that just blew my mind. The fact that there was a whole nother region attached to Kanto and you could go back and see it, it was just so cool to me. I really wish more generations had these regions actually connected more completely like this. Granted, Crystal is very long because of this, which maybe isn't the best for it. And now as I make my way through Victory Road, which is weirdly empty, I can fight the rival. He leads with a Sneasel this time. I like that they kind of mix up the order of his team. It makes this just not so cookie cutter. Blue's team is a little bit like repetitive. Each time you see him, it's the exact same Pokemon in the exact same order. For the most part, I guess there's a couple of changes. But status conditions can be really annoying here. I can make it all the way to the Typhlosion, and then I just get hit by a quick attack and taken out. Sneasel really isn't the hardest thing to go up against at first. It should be pretty good against me, but its special attack is so low that even if it had good ice moves, it just wouldn't hit that hard. Sleep Powder helps a lot against Typhlosion. It has Flame Wheel now, which is a big improvement over its Ember it had earlier. I still don't have a great answer for Magneton, unfortunately. It has very consistent damage with Sonic Boom, and it can paralyze, which is just problematic. But luckily I get a crit from Razor Leaf, which finishes the battle. Now with that, we're on to the Elite Four. Will has a very interesting team to me. He has some Zatus, which actually break the mold a little bit from Gen 1. So the combination of flying types, ice types, it actually makes things a little bit more interesting. The Confuse Ray is really annoying. The fact that it's 100% accurate means that they can always hit it if they wake up. I'm not quite as indestructible once they're asleep like I am in Gen 1. Once I knock out Executor, I can get up to level 53 and learn Synthesis. Now maybe I should have kept Growth, I'm not really sure. Synthesis is a great move for restoring HP and it could be very useful. And Growth does not badge boost me like it does in Gen 1, so I don't need to necessarily spam it if I'm going to be just using Return. Which is my main strategy here against Koga. His poison types will resist Razor Leaf, so I don't want to use it that much against him. For him, I mostly have to just hit Returns and use Synthesis if I get low. I do get to Fortress at quite low health, I put it to sleep, and then I just start healing up with Synthesis. I am worried that if it wakes up and uses Explosion, it'll take me out. In fact, I realize that it can't do much to me unless it uses Explosion, so I can heal up here and just keep it asleep. It wakes up and uses Spikes, which is kind of pointless in a solo run. It doesn't affect me at all, so that's fine. I can put it back to sleep and just slowly knock it out. Bug and Steel is actually like the perfect combination against Venusaur. It makes things much more difficult. But after that, we get to see the strongest Elite Four member, Bruno. Obviously, I'm joking. Bruno is better in Gen 2, though, than he is in Gen 1. He's still not the best, but he can be problematic for Pokemon that actually have weaknesses to him now. Before, he was never a problem, even for like electric types and normal type Pokemon. It was just sad. He's not a problem today for Venusaur, though, and we can move on to Karen. I am a little bit worried for her because of Houndoom. I am a little bit worried getting to that thing. So I am doing everything in my power to avoid status conditions, getting my accuracy dropped, anything like that. I don't want to get hit by a flamethrower and then not be able to move. That would just be a bad time. Unfortunately, Gengar does get the win here. It actually kind of got it in two ways. It put a curse on me, so I was going to go down anyway, but it also had Destiny Bond right at the end. So if I had hit that last move, it would have taken me out anyway, so that was just stuck between a rock and a hard place, really. I go in again and just try to make it back to the Gengar without taking any damage. Sleep Powder makes this much easier than it probably would have been. I want to avoid the Stun Spore on the Vileplume this time. I did not think that through, but this time I put it to sleep so it doesn't manage to land it. Now that I'm not paralyzed, I can just put Gengar to sleep, and then Razor Leaf slowly knocks it out. I really don't have a good answer for Gengar yet at this point. Mud Slap is the only ground type move Venusaur learns in this generation, so I didn't want to have to use that. Razor Leaf was doing just as much damage, so I'd rather have that instead. But with that, we're on to Lance, who's actually the champion this time. I guess they're trying to set up a story like that there's been no champion since Red, which is kind of crazy. I don't know how many years it's been necessarily, but it feels a little bit weird that Red and Blue were the only ones to ever become the champion and that Blue didn't ever come back afterward. I do end up paralyzed as I go into the Aerodactyl, which is really problematic because it has super effective damage with Wing Attack, and Hyper Beam also hits pretty hard. I can heal up with Synthesis a little bit, but I just can't keep up with Aerodactyl's damage, and it can take me out. I can go back in against the Gyarados. I'm not too worried about this thing. It's going to set up Rain Dance on the first turn, and even a Hyper Beam doesn't do that much damage. Getting hit by Thunder Wave is the thing I'm actually the most scared of. Dragonite will prioritize that. He's just trying to get me paralyzed so that I'm slowed and have issues for the rest of the battle. I just have to use Sleep Powder on it, and then slowly knock it out with Return. It's going to be a 3-hit, and Razor Leaf just isn't that good even with a crit against these dragons. So besides Aerodactyl, I just need to hit everything with Return and put it to sleep as much as possible. The Charizard is actually less of a problem than the Dragonites. It can't paralyze me, so I don't want to get hit by a Flamethrower obviously, but as long as I can knock it out with Return while it's sleeping, I'm not too worried about getting paralyzed for the rest of the battle, and we can get the win against Lance. So Venusaur has beaten the Elite Four with a time of 1 hour and 43 minutes and 6 hours of game time, but the game is not over yet. We got to go to Kanto. We can take the ship over to Vermilion City and fight Surge and all of the other Kanto gym leaders. For the sake of the video, I'm only going to show the most challenging gym leader for each of these Pokemon that I'm playing, as well as Blue and Red. Just know the rest of the battles against like Brock are incredibly easy. For Venusaur, the hardest one was actually Sabrina. I thought it could be Blaine, but Sabrina actually puts up a really good fight with Alakazam. It gets me all the way down to 30 HP, which is a lot closer than I thought it would be. But Return does great damage against these Psychic types, and I can get the win. And with that, we only have 2 battles left in the entire game, Blue and then Red. His entire team is actually about 20 levels higher than Janine's Pokemon in the Fuchsia City Gym, which is crazy to me. Janine doesn't have any Pokemon over level 40, but Blaine has Pokemon that are almost level 60. That's a huge difference. In this battle, Arcanine is my biggest threat. I can put it to sleep though, and as long as it doesn't hit a Flamethrower, I think I made it through. Gyarados shouldn't do a ton. It's going to use Rain Dance again, just like Lance did. And Exeggutor doesn't actually have Hypnosis like he does in Red version, which is the worst thing it can really do. So without that, Egg Bomb and Solar Beam just are not that scary. Sunny Day would actually help with Synthesis, so I'm not too worried about that, and his Fire type has already been knocked out. And after that, Rhydon is an easy one-hit with Razor Leaf. And now, I have one last fight against Red. I use all of my rare candies, taking Venusaur up to level 72, and we can try this battle. He leads off with Pikachu and I hit Return. It knocks it out in one hit, which is nice. I don't have to deal with having my stats dropped or getting paralyzed or hit by Thunder. I put Espeon to sleep and start healing up with Synthesis to get back up to full health in case it wakes up. But then it wakes up right away. I hit a Return, and then I realize it's going to outspeed me, so it will always knock me out if it wakes up from sleep. So what I need to do is just hit a Return into Pikachu, knock it out. Wait, I can't actually knock it out every single time. It's actually a roll. I hit it again and now it goes down. I put Espeon back to sleep, but this time I'm just going to knock it out as fast as possible. I try Razor Leaf and it does okay damage. It might have been better to use Return, but the crit really makes it easier. Now against Snorlax, I'm considering what I should do. I should just probably put it to sleep. This sleepy guy just needs to slowly get knocked out, probably with Razor Leaf. Return actually does more for now, and then it starts using Amnesia when it wakes up. So I really just actually need to use Return. I thought I might have to use Razor Leaf at some point here, but really it doesn't seem to be as useful in this fight as I thought it would be. Venusaur can't do much. I put it to sleep just so it can't heal itself and be annoying. I definitely need to put Charizard to sleep though. I don't want to get hit by a Flamethrower. Luckily I outspeed this thing by 2 speed. That is close. I did not know that that was going to happen going into this, but I'm very grateful it did. That makes it much easier. I can knock it out and get to the Blastoise, which I think I could one-hit with Razor Leaf, but I want to put it to sleep just in case, because if it uses Blizzard and hits, I'm definitely gone. Luckily, Razor Leaf does one hit, I can knock it out, and that is the game. We can finish the game with 2 hours and 14 minutes and 53 seconds of real time, 7 hours and 58 minutes of game time. Thank you everyone for watching, you've all been awesome, and look for more of these in the future. But until next time, have a wonderful day.